a trusted nanny, a young princess, and a glass of warm milk that should never have been given. What started as a royal guard's gut feeling ended with criminal charges that shook Kensington Palace to its core. This is the story of how one person's instinct saved Princess Charlotte's life and sent someone William trusted to prison. Stay until the end, because the evidence discovered was more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. Sergeant Thomas Wright had been assigned to Princess Charlotte's protection detail for 8 months, long enough to know her patterns, long enough to recognize when something changed. It was a Tuesday evening in late September when he first noticed. Charlotte sat in the family drawing room, her schoolbooks spread across the low table. Kate worked beside her, helping with homework. Normal scene, except Charlotte's head kept drooping forward. Her eyes would close, then snap open as she forced herself awake. "Sweetheart, are you feeling all right?" Kate asked, placing a hand on Charlotte's forehead. "Just tired, Mummy," Charlotte mumbled. Her words came out slightly slurred. "I don't know why." Kate glanced at her watch. 6:15 in the evening. Charlotte never napped, never showed fatigue this early. The princess was known among staff for her boundless energy, the child who could outlast her brothers in the palace gardens. Wright stood by the door, perfectly still, but his mind catalogued details. Charlotte had been with her nanny, Eleanor Hayes, for the past 2 hours. Standard after-school routine, reading time, light snack, preparation for dinner. Nothing unusual on paper, except this drowsiness, this unnatural exhaustion in a child who'd been perfectly animated at school pickup just hours earlier. Before we go further, hit that subscribe button. Let us know in the comments what country you're watching from. Now, here's how the guard first realized something was terribly wrong. Kate helped Charlotte upstairs to rest. Wright remained at his post, but something nagged at him, a feeling he couldn't name yet. Years of military service had taught him to trust those feelings. 3 days later, it happened again. Charlotte sat in the library, her favorite storybook open in her lap. Eleanor Hayes was with her, reading aloud in that practiced, soothing voice that had made her so valued among palace staff. The nanny had worked for the royal family for 4 years. Impeccable references, never a single complaint. Wright walked past during his rounds. Through the doorway, he saw Charlotte's head tilt sideways. Her eyes were closed. Eleanor kept reading, her voice steady, but her gaze flicked to the guard. Just for a second, then back to the book. "Princess Charlotte needs her rest," Eleanor said pleasantly. "She's had such a busy week." It was Thursday. The week was barely half over. Wright nodded and continued his patrol, but he made a note in his mind. Tuesday evening, drowsy. Thursday afternoon, asleep. Both times. Shortly after being with Eleanor Hayes. Coincidence, probably. Children got tired. School was demanding. Charlotte had riding lessons, piano practice, public appearances. Maybe she simply needed more sleep. But Wright had been trained to notice patterns, and patterns were starting to emerge. The following Monday, Charlotte attended a palace reception with her parents, a junior event designed to help her grow comfortable with royal duties. 30 minutes of greeting guests, shaking hands, posing for carefully controlled photographs. Charlotte performed beautifully for the first 20 minutes. Poised, smiling, every bit the young princess she was being raised to become. Then, something shifted. Her smile became forced. Her eyelids drooped. She swayed slightly, catching herself on William's arm. "I think Charlotte's had enough," William said quietly to an aide. "Let's wrap this up." Eleanor Hayes appeared instantly, as if she'd been waiting. "I'll take her upstairs, Your Highness. She's just overwhelmed. I know exactly what she needs." William hesitated. Wright saw it in the prince's face. That flicker of concern, but Eleanor had been Charlotte's nanny for years. Trusted, reliable. "All right," William agreed, "but call if she's not feeling better soon." Eleanor guided Charlotte toward the stairs. one hand firmly on the princess's shoulder. Charlotte leaned against her, eyes half closed. Wright followed at a professional distance. Standard protocol when any royal child left a public space. He watched Eleanor take Charlotte to the nursery wing, watched the door close behind them. 20 minutes later, Eleanor emerged alone. She walked with confidence, completely composed. Saw Wright standing in the corridor. "She's sleeping peacefully," Eleanor said. "Just needed her usual bedtime routine a bit early today." "Her usual routine?" Wright asked. Casual question, professional tone. "Warm milk, quiet time, her favorite blanket," Eleanor replied smoothly. "Works every time." She walked past him, heels clicking on the polished floor. Wright remained in place, running through what he'd just heard. Warm milk, every time. He thought back through the past 2 weeks. The drowsiness always came in the evening, always after Eleanor's care, always following the same pattern. 3 weeks. That's how long it took before Wright was certain something was wrong. He started documenting. Not officially, not yet. Just personal notes. Times, dates, Charlotte's condition before and after time with Eleanor. He couldn't access medical records, couldn't ask direct questions without raising alarms. But he could watch. Tuesday evening, Charlotte arrived home from school full of energy, chattering to her protection officer about a science project, laughing with George. Completely normal. 90 minutes later, after time in the nursery with Eleanor, Charlotte could barely keep her eyes open during dinner. Thursday afternoon, same pattern. Charlotte animated and engaged during lunch, drowsy and quiet by evening tea. Saturday morning, Charlotte went riding with Kate. Alert, focused, skillful on her pony. 3 hours later, after Eleanor brought her afternoon refreshment, Charlotte fell asleep in the middle of a conversation with her grandmother. Wright knew what his training manual would say. Report concerns through proper channels. Document and elevate. Don't investigate independently. But something stopped him from filing an official report. Eleanor Hayes had powerful allies on staff. 4 years of sterling service. References from noble families across England. If Wright was wrong, if this was nothing more than a child's natural fatigue, his career would suffer. He needed to be certain. The opportunity came on a Sunday evening. Wright was assigned to overnight security in the family wing. Charlotte had attended church services that morning, played in the gardens that afternoon. By all accounts, she should have been naturally tired, but Eleanor insisted, on her evening routine anyway. Wright positioned himself near the nursery corridor, not obviously watching, just present. He heard Eleanor's voice through the partially open door, soft and soothing. "Here we are, sweetheart. Your special milk. Helps you sleep so well." "It tastes funny tonight," Charlotte's young voice responded. "Kind of bitter." "That's just the honey, darling. Drink it all up. You'll feel better." A pause. Then Charlotte's voice, quieter. "I'm already sleepy. Can I skip it tonight?" Now. You know the routine. Every night. That's what makes it work." Wright's hand moved unconsciously toward his radio. But he stopped himself. He had nothing concrete. Just instinct. Just a child saying milk tasted bitter. 15 minutes later, Eleanor emerged from the nursery. She carried an empty glass on a small tray. Saw Wright in the corridor. "All settled for the night," she said pleasantly. "Bit early, isn't it?" Wright observed. "The sun's barely down." Eleanor's smile tightened. Just slightly. Princess Charlotte keeps a very disciplined schedule. Routine is important for children. She walked past him. Wright watched her go, then glanced back toward the nursery door. That glass. Empty. Whatever had been in it, Charlotte had consumed. He didn't know it yet, but testing that next glass would uncover a pattern that had been going on for weeks. And Charlotte wasn't the only child at risk. Wright made a decision. Tomorrow, he would speak to Captain Richard Wells, head of palace security. He'd present his observations. Let someone with more authority decide if this warranted investigation. But tomorrow was too far away. That night, around 11, Wright heard crying from the nursery wing. Not loud, muffled, the kind of sound a child makes when trying not to disturb anyone. He moved quickly but quietly to Charlotte's door, knocked it gently. "Princess Charlotte, are you all right?" The crying stopped. Silence. Then, so softly, he almost missed it. "I don't feel good." Wright opened the door. Charlotte sat up in bed, her face pale in the nightlight's glow. She looked much younger than her years, small, frightened. "My tummy hurts," she whispered, "and my head feels funny, like everything's far away." Wright stepped inside, maintaining proper distance. "Should I call your parents?" Charlotte shook her head quickly. "No, they'll worry. Miss Eleanor says I just need to sleep it off. That it's normal." "Miss Eleanor has said this before?" Wright asked carefully. "Sometimes I wake up feeling strange," Charlotte admitted, "like I'm still dreaming, even though my eyes are open. She says it's because I don't drink all my milk fast enough, that I need to finish it quicker." Every instinct Wright possessed screamed alarm, but he kept his voice calm, professional. "Would you like some water? Something to settle your stomach?" "Yes, please." He fetched water from the ensuite bathroom. Charlotte drank it slowly, her hands trembling slightly on the Oswald glass. "Sergeant Wright," she said after a moment, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, Your Highness." "Is it normal to forget things? Like, I know something happened, but I can't remember exactly what." Wright's blood ran cold. "What kind of things?" "Yesterday afternoon. I remember Miss Eleanor giving me my milk. Then, nothing until dinner, but George said I was playing with him in the garden. I don't remember any of it." Memory gaps, disorientation, physical symptoms, combined with the bitter taste, the insistence on the routine, Eleanor's defensive behavior. Wright had suspected something was wrong. Now he knew it was worse than wrong. It was criminal. "Princess Charlotte," he said gently, "tomorrow I'm going to speak to some people about this. Important people who can help. But tonight I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If Miss Eleanor offers you milk or anything to drink tomorrow, tell her you're not thirsty. Can you do that?" Charlotte nodded slowly. "Am I in trouble?" "No, sweetheart. You're not in trouble at all. You're very brave for telling me this." He stayed until she fell asleep. Real sleep. Not the sedated unconsciousness he now suspected had been happening nightly. Then he went directly to Captain Wells's quarters. Some things couldn't wait for morning. Wright knocked firmly on the captain's door. It was 11:45 at night. This had better be important. Wells answered in his dressing gown, irritation clear on his face. Then he saw Wright's expression. "Sir, I need to report a potential threat to Princess Charlotte," Wright said without preamble. Wells' entire demeanor changed. "Come in." Wright laid out everything. The pattern of drowsiness, the timing, Eleanor's behavior, Charlotte's symptoms, the memory gaps, the bitter taste in the milk. Wells listened without interruption. When Wright finished, the captain sat back in his chair. "These are serious accusations, Sergeant." "I know, sir." "Eleanor Hayes has an exemplary record." "I know that too, sir. If you're wrong—" "I'm not wrong," Wright said firmly. "Something is being put in that child's milk. Something that's sedating her, causing memory loss, making her physically ill, and it's happening regularly." Wells studied him. "You understand what you're alleging constitutes criminal child abuse?" "Yes, sir. That's exactly what I'm alleging." The captain stood. "Then we handle this by the book. Tomorrow morning, first thing, we secure any remaining milk or beverages in the nursery. We call in Dr. Sarah Chen to examine Charlotte. We document everything. And we do not, I repeat, do not, Alert Eleanor Hayes until we have concrete evidence. Understood, sir. Good work, Sergeant. Dismissed. Wright left, adrenaline still pumping through his system. He'd crossed a line tonight, accused a trusted staff member of drugging a princess. His career balanced on whether the evidence proved him right. But when he thought of Charlotte's pale face, her confusion, her trembling hands, he knew he'd made the only choice possible. Tomorrow would bring answers. He just hoped they came in time. The guard had no idea that bottle would contain evidence of a crime that would shock the entire royal household. Monday morning arrived with autumn rain against the palace windows. Wright had barely slept. He arrived for his shift at 6, 2 hours early. Captain Wells was already in his office. Dr. Chen arrives at 8, Wells said. I've arranged for Charlotte to have a routine checkup. Nothing that will alarm her or the family. We'll examine her then. And the milk? Kitchen staff have been instructed to log every beverage sent to the nursery today. Eleanor won't be notified. Everything goes through standard channels, but we'll be watching. Wright nodded. Professional, controlled, but his mind raced through possibilities. What if Eleanor sensed something was wrong? What if she changed her pattern today of all days? What if he'd waited too long, and Charlotte was already harmed beyond repair? At 7:30, Charlotte came downstairs for breakfast. Wright watched from his position in the corridor. She seemed brighter this morning, more alert. She laughed at something George said, stole a piece of his toast. Because she hadn't had her evening milk last night. The thought sat heavy in Wright's chest. Eleanor Hayes arrived at 8:15, precisely on schedule. She wore her usual uniform, carried her usual bag, smiled at the staff she passed. Everything perfectly normal. Except Wright noticed how her eyes swept the corridors, how she paused when she saw Captain Wells speaking with another officer, how her hand gripped her bag just a fraction tighter. Did she suspect? Or was Wright seeing danger where none existed? Good morning, Sergeant, Eleanor said pleasantly as she passed him. Lovely weather we're having. It was pouring rain. Dr. Sarah Chen arrived through the private entrance at 8:20. Royal Saint-Savant, physician, trusted completely by the family. Wells had briefed her personally, shown her Wright's documentation. Charlotte is expecting a routine checkup, Wells told Wright. We've told her it's for school records. Dr. Chen will conduct a full examination and take blood samples. Standard procedure, won't raise suspicions. How long for results? Wright asked. Toxicology, 48 hours minimum, possibly 72. Too long. Wright's jaw clenched. Anything could happen in 3 days. But Wells put a hand on his shoulder. I know, but we do this right or we do it wrong. Right means it holds up in court. Court. The word hung in the air. This wasn't just about removing a staff member. This was about prosecution. Prison. Charlotte's examination took place in the palace medical suite. Kate accompanied her, chatting casually about Charlotte's upcoming piano recital. Nothing to suggest concern. Nothing to trigger fear. Wright stood outside, listening to muffled voices through the door. Dr. Chen's calm questions. Charlotte's cheerful answers. The princess had no idea this examination might save her life. 30 minutes later, Dr. Chen emerged. Her face was carefully neutral, but Wright saw the tightness around her eyes. Captain Wells, a word please, she said quietly. They moved to Wells's office. Wright was summoned minutes later. Dr. Chen sat with a folder open in front of her. I've taken blood samples for full toxicology screening, but I can tell you now, based on physical examination, that child shows signs consistent with regular sedative use. Wright felt something cold settle in his stomach. What signs? Pupils slightly dilated even in bright light. Mild tremor in her hands when she's trying to focus. She mentioned frequent headaches, stomach discomfort, and episodes of confusion. She's also significantly underweight for her height and age. When I asked about sleep, she told me she sleeps a lot, but always wakes up feeling tired. Could these symptoms have other causes? Wells asked. Absolutely. That's why we need toxicology confirmation. But combined with Sergeant Wright's observations, Dr. Chen closed the folder. I've treated enough cases to recognize the pattern. Someone is giving that child sedatives, regularly, and has been for some time. The room fell silent. How long? Wright finally asked. Based on the symptom severity, weeks at minimum, possibly months. Months. Charlotte had been suffering for months, and no one had noticed. No one except Wright, who'd only started paying attention 3 weeks ago. Can you tell what medication? Wells asked. Not without lab confirmation, but based on her described symptoms, the memory gaps, the bitter taste, the prolonged drowsiness, my educated guess would be a benzodiazepine or similar sedative hypnotic, something designed to induce sleep and cause amnesia. Prescription medication, Wells said. Yes, controlled substance. Not something you can purchase over the counter, which meant Eleanor had either obtained it illegally or had access to someone's prescription. Either way, criminal. Wright's hands clenched into fists. What do we do now? We wait for toxicology, Wells said, and we watch, every moment. If Eleanor tries to give Charlotte anything, we intervene, Dr. Chen interrupted. Immediately. I don't care about evidence or procedure. That child's safety comes first. Wells nodded. Agreed. Right, you're on Charlotte's detail exclusively until this is resolved. You don't leave her vicinity when Eleanor Hayes is present. Understood? Yes, sir. Good. Now we wait. But Eleanor didn't wait. That afternoon, Charlotte had art lessons in the nursery. Eleanor supervised, as she always did. Wright stood outside the door, positioned so he could see through the partially open entrance. Charlotte painted with focused concentration. Watercolors, her favorite. A garden scene, flowers in bright primary colors. Beautiful work, darling, Eleanor said warmly. You're so talented. Thank you, Miss Eleanor. You must be getting thirsty. All this concentration. Let me get you something to drink. Wright tensed. He watched Eleanor move to the small kitchenette attached to the nursery, heard the sound of a glass being filled, heard something else too, a faint rattling. Pills in a bottle. He moved to the doorway. Everything all right? Eleanor turned, a glass of milk in her hand. Her smile was perfect, professional. Just fine, Sergeant. Charlotte needs her afternoon refreshment. I'll take it to her, Wright said, stepping inside. Eleanor's smile didn't waver, but something flickered in her eyes. That's not necessary. I'm perfectly capable. Palace security protocol, Wright said firmly. All food and beverages for principals must be handled according to new guidelines. Complete fabrication. No such protocol existed. Eleanor knew it. Wright saw the calculation in her face. She could challenge him, insist on her authority over the nursery, or she could comply and avoid drawing attention. She handed him the glass. Of course, protocol. Her fingers left slight moisture on the glass. Her hand had been shaking. Wright carried the milk to Charlotte. Your drink, Your Highness. Charlotte looked up from her painting. Oh, thank you. She reached for it automatically. Actually, Wright said casually, Dr. Chen mentioned you should avoid dairy for a few days. Something about your examination this morning. Better safe than sorry. Charlotte's hand stopped. Oh, all right. I'll get you water instead, Wright offered. That would be lovely. He returned to the kitchenette. Eleanor stood exactly where he'd left her, watching. Wright set the milk glass on the counter, used his body to shield it from her view, and carefully slipped it into an evidence bag he'd concealed in his jacket. The chain of custody wouldn't be perfect, but it was better than nothing. He returned with water. Charlotte drank it, happily, completely unaware of what had just happened. Eleanor watched the entire exchange, said nothing, But when she thought Wright wasn't looking, her hand moved to her necklace, touched it repeatedly, a nervous gesture she couldn't quite control. That evening, Wright delivered the glass to Captain Wells. "Good work," Wells said. "I'll have it couriered to the lab immediately. Expedited testing." "How long?" 24 hours. They understand the sensitivity. What Charlotte said next confirmed every suspicion he'd had. The next morning, Tuesday, Charlotte was unusually quiet at breakfast. She pushed food around her plate, barely eating. Kate noticed. "Sweetheart, you need to eat." "I'm not very hungry, Mummy." "Are you feeling ill?" Charlotte hesitated. Then, so quietly, Wright almost missed it. "I feel better, actually. I haven't felt this awake in ages." Kate's expression shifted. Concern deepened into something else. Suspicion. "Charlotte," Kate said carefully, "have you been feeling unwell for a while?" The princess nodded. "I thought it was normal. Miss Eleanor said growing children get tired easily, that I just needed more rest." "And the rest helped?" "I don't know. I sleep so much, but I'm still tired. Except that these past 2 days, I haven't been as sleepy. It's strange." Kate's eyes found Wright across the room. He saw the exact moment understanding clicked into place. 2 days. Charlotte hadn't received her evening milk for 2 days, and suddenly she felt better. Kate excused herself from breakfast. Wright followed at a discreet distance. She went directly to William's study. Wright couldn't hear the conversation, but he saw through the partially open door. Kate's animated gestures, William's expression darkening. The phone call he made immediately after. 15 minutes later, Wright was summoned to the study. William stood by the window, his back rigid. Kate sat on the sofa, her hands clasped tightly together. "Sergeant Wright," William said, without turning. "Captain Wells has briefed us on your concerns regarding Eleanor Hayes." "Yes, Your Highness." "My wife has just informed me that Charlotte has been experiencing unusual fatigue and illness for some time. Symptoms that have suddenly improved over the past 48 hours." "Yes, Your Highness." William finally turned. His face was controlled, but fury blazed in his eyes. "If someone has been harming my daughter, if someone I trusted has been drugging her, I want them arrested. Immediately. Do you understand?" "We're waiting on toxicology confirmation, sir. Should arrive today." "The moment, the absolute moment. You have proof. I want Metropolitan Police involved. Full investigation. Criminal charges. I don't care about discretion or palace reputation. My daughter's safety is all that matters." "Understood, sir." Kate spoke for the first time. "Where is Eleanor now?" "With Princess Charlotte, ma'am. Sergeant Wright has been maintaining constant surveillance." "I want her away from Charlotte," Kate said firmly. "Now." "If we remove her too soon, she'll know we suspect something," William said, though the words clearly pained him. "She might destroy evidence. We need to catch her in the act, or have irrefutable proof." Kate's jaw clenched. "So we leave our daughter with someone who's poisoning her?" "We leave Charlotte with a guard who won't let her out of his sight for even a second," William corrected. He looked at Wright. "Correct, Sergeant?" "Absolutely correct, sir." The toxicology results arrived at 4:30 that afternoon. Captain Wells called Wright to his office immediately. Dr. Chen was already there, along with Detective Inspector David Pierce from the Metropolitan Police. Wells slid a document across the desk. Wright scanned the medical terminology, the chemical names, the measured levels. "What am I looking at?" he asked. Dr. Chen answered. "Lorazepam, a benzodiazepine sedative, found in both the blood sample from Princess Charlotte and in the milk sample you secured. The levels in Charlotte's system indicate regular sustained use over an extended period, weeks, possibly months." "And the dosage?" Pierce asked. "High enough to cause significant sedation in a child. Not immediately life-threatening, but prolonged use can cause serious developmental issues, cognitive impairment, physical dependence." Wright felt sick. She's been dependent on it? Addicted? Potentially. We'll need to monitor her carefully as it leaves her system. She may experience withdrawal symptoms. What the toxicology report revealed was worse than anyone imagined. But first, if you're as shocked as we were, hit that like button and tell us in the comments. Should nanny background checks be more strict? Now, here's what doctors found in that glass of milk. Detective Inspector Pierce leaned forward. The milk sample. Can you confirm it was contaminated? Crushed lorazepam tablets dissolved in whole milk, Dr. Chen confirmed. Approximately 2 milligrams. A significant dose for a child Charlotte's age. Enough for an arrest? William asked. He'd entered the room silently during the briefing. Pierce nodded. Combined with the medical evidence, witness testimony, and pattern documentation, yes, Your Highness, more than enough. Then arrest her, William said coldly. Now. We need to secure additional evidence first, Pierce said carefully. Search her quarters, obtain her medical records if she has a prescription, interview other staff. Do whatever you need to do, but I want her in custody tonight. I want her away from my children, and I want her facing criminal charges. Pierce exchanged glances with Wells. Understood, sir. We'll execute the arrest within the hour, but I recommend you and the princess consort take Charlotte somewhere private. This will be disturbing, and she doesn't need to witness it. William's voice was ice. We'll be in the family quarters, but Detective Inspector, I want to be informed the moment she's in custody. Of course, Your Highness. William left. The door closed with quiet finality. Pierce stood. Right then. Let's get a warrant and bring her in. Sergeant Wright, I'll need your full statement. Every observation, every interaction, every detail you can remember. Wright spent the next 40 minutes in detailing everything he'd witnessed. The pattern of Charlotte's drowsiness, Eleanor's defensive behavior, the bitter taste Charlotte mentioned, the memory gaps, the glass of milk he'd secured. At 5:45, the arrest team assembled. Metropolitan Police, Palace Security, legal representation present to ensure everything was handled correctly. Eleanor Hayes was in the nursery with Charlotte, reading a story. Same routine she'd followed for years. Completely normal, except for the armed officers waiting in the corridor. Kate appeared, smiled pleasantly at Eleanor. I'll take over story time. William wants to see you in Captain Wells's office. Eleanor's composure slipped for just a second. Is something wrong? Just routine staffing matters, Kate said smoothly. I'm sure it won't take long. Eleanor had no choice but to comply. She stood, smoothed her uniform, smiled at Charlotte. I'll be back soon, darling. Okay, Miss Eleanor. Eleanor walked into the corridor, saw the officers waiting. Her face went pale. Eleanor Hayes, Detective Inspector Pierce said formally. I'm arresting you on suspicion of administering a noxious substance to a child endangerment and assault. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defense if you do not mention. When questioned something which you later rely on in court, anything you do say may be given in evidence. Eleanor's professional mask shattered. This is insane. I haven't done anything wrong. You have the right to legal representation, Pierce continued. Do you understand these rights as I've explained them? I don't need rights because I haven't done anything. Her voice rose, panic breaking through. Someone is making terrible accusations. Ma'am, I need you to come with us quietly, Pierce said. We can do this calmly, or we can use restraints. Your choice. Eleanor looked around wildly, saw Wright standing nearby. Her eyes locked on him with sudden understanding. You, she breathed. You did this. You've been watching me, following me. I was protecting Princess Charlotte, Wright said calmly. From what? I've cared for that child for years. I've given her everything she needed. Including lorazepam dissolved in her evening milk, Pierce interrupted. We have toxicology evidence. Witnesses, the contaminated glass. You can cooperate now, or we can add obstruction to the charges. The fight drained out of Eleanor. Her shoulders slumped. I want a lawyer. You'll have one. Let's go. They led her away. Wright watched until she disappeared around the corner. 4 years of trusted service. 4 years of access to a royal child. And no one had suspected. No one except the guard who'd trusted his instincts over protocol. In 72 hours, that nanny would be formally charged. But the real nightmare was only beginning. Eleanor Hayes spent her first night in police custody in a holding cell at the Metropolitan Police Station. She requested her lawyer immediately, said nothing else. But silence couldn't protect her from what investigators were already uncovering. At 6 the next morning, Detective Inspector Pierce executed a search warrant on Eleanor's private quarters in the staff wing of Kensington Palace. What they found made the case airtight. Wright accompanied the search team. He stood in the doorway of Eleanor's small but comfortable room, while officers systematically documented everything. "Sir, you'll want to see this," one officer called from the bathroom. Pierce moved quickly. Wright followed. The medicine cabinet stood open. Inside, tucked behind everyday toiletries, sat 3 prescription bottles, all in Eleanor's name, all for lorazepam, prescribed by 3 different doctors over the past 8 months. "Doctor shopping," Pierce said quietly. Classic pattern. She went to multiple physicians, claimed anxiety or insomnia, got prescriptions from each. None of them knew about the others. "Is that illegal?" Wright asked. "Fraudulent prescription acquisition." "Yes. Add it to the list of charges." An officer searching the bedroom called out, "Detective, you need to see this." They found it in Eleanor's nightstand drawer. A journal, handwritten entries dating back 6 months. Pierce pulled on gloves, opened it carefully, read aloud. March 15th. Charlotte was difficult again today. Crying, demanding attention, refusing to settle. The milk worked perfectly. She was asleep within 20 minutes. 2 hours of peace. He flipped forward. April 2nd, increased dosage slightly. Charlotte slept through lunch. Kate asked if she was ill, told her the princess was just tired from school activities. No suspicions. Another page. May 10th, Charlotte asking why she feels strange after her milk. Need to be more careful with timing. Perhaps dissolve tablets more thoroughly to reduce bitter taste. Wright felt his stomach turn. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't a mistake. Eleanor had been systematically, deliberately drugging Charlotte for months. And documenting it. "Why would she write this down?" Wright asked. "Control," Pierce said. "Addicts and abusers often document their actions. Makes them feel powerful, gives them a record of their success." He closed the journal carefully. "This is premeditated child abuse. Extended pattern. The Crown Prosecution Service will have everything they need." The search continued. More evidence emerged. Receipts for prescription medications from different pharmacies. Internet search history on Eleanor's laptop, showing queries about child sedation, benzodiazepine effects, avoiding detection, and most damning, emails to her sister sent 2 months earlier. "I've found the perfect solution to managing Charlotte. She's so much easier when she's drowsy. The family thinks I'm a miracle worker because she's so calm around me, and they have no idea." Pierce photographed everything, logged it, secured it. By noon, the evidence filled 3 storage boxes. "This is enough to put her away for years," Pierce said. "Child endangerment, administering a noxious substance, fraudulent prescriptions, assault of a minor. She's looking at significant prison time." "Good," Wright said. William wanted to be briefed immediately. Pierce and Wright met him in his private office at 2 that afternoon. William listened in absolute silence as Pierce detailed the evidence. The prescriptions, the journal, the emails, the pattern of systematic drugging spanning 6 months. When Pierce finished, William stood, walked to the window, stood with his back to them for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was deadly, calm. 6 months. Yes, Your Highness. Someone was poisoning my daughter for 6 months, and no one noticed. Your Highness? William turned. I'm not blaming you, Detective Inspector. I'm blaming myself. Charlotte is my child, my responsibility, and I trusted someone who was harming her every single day. Eleanor Hayes was carefully skilled at deception, Pierce said. Her references were impeccable. Her behavior was professional. She knew exactly how to avoid suspicion. Until Sergeant Wright noticed. Both men looked at Wright. Yes, sir, Pierce confirmed. Sergeant Wright's observations and documentation were instrumental in building this case. William crossed to Wright, extended his hand. Thank you. You saved my daughter from God knows how much more suffering. Wright shook the offered hand. Just doing my job, sir. No, you went beyond your job. You trusted your instincts when you had no concrete proof. You risked your career to protect Charlotte. That's not just duty. That's integrity. Wright felt something tight in his chest ease slightly. She's a good kid, sir. Deserves better than what she was getting. She's getting better now. Dr. Chen says Charlotte's symptoms are already improving. No permanent damage expected, because you acted when you did. We're approaching the moment when everything came crashing down for the nanny. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. We cover royal protection stories others won't touch. Here's what happened when William learned the full truth about what Eleanor had planned next. The investigation expanded. Pierce's team interviewed every staff member who'd worked with Eleanor. The picture that emerged was disturbing. A housemaid reported that she'd seen Eleanor crushing pills on several occasions. I asked what she was doing. She said they were vitamins for Charlotte, easier to swallow when powdered. I didn't think anything of it. Charlotte's previous tutor mentioned that the princess had become increasingly drowsy during afternoon lessons. It started around March. Charlotte would fall asleep during reading. Eleanor insisted it was normal childhood fatigue. I accepted that explanation. Even Kate had noticed changes. Charlotte became quieter over the spring, she told investigators. Less energetic. I thought it was just her growing up, becoming more reserved. Eleanor assured me it was a normal developmental phase. Eleanor had been so convincing, so professional, so trusted. The most chilling revelation came from Eleanor's personal laptop. Search history from 2 weeks before her arrest. How to increase benzodiazepine dosage without detection. Long-term effects of sedatives on children. Can tolerance develop to sleep medications? She'd been planning to increase the dosage. Charlotte's developing tolerance meant the current amount was becoming less effective. Eleanor's solution wasn't to stop. It was to give Charlotte more. Dr. Chen reviewed the search history with growing alarm. If she'd increased the dosage significantly, we could have been looking at respiratory depression, loss of consciousness, even coma. Charlotte could have died. Wright had stopped it just in time. That conversation would be played in court 6 months later. But first, Charlotte needed to recover. Dr. Chen monitored Charlotte closely over the following weeks. The princess experienced mild withdrawal symptoms, headaches, anxiety, difficulty sleeping, but nothing severe. The dosage, while harmful, hadn't been high enough to cause physical dependence requiring medical intervention. She's remarkably resilient, Dr. Chen told William and Kate in a private consultation. Physically, she'll make a full recovery. Emotionally, that may take longer. Charlotte knew something had happened. She was old enough to understand that Eleanor was gone, that something had been wrong. But William and Kate, with Dr. Chen's guidance, decided to shield her from the full details. When she's older, we'll explain, Kate said. For now, she knows Eleanor made a mistake and had to leave. That's enough. Charlotte seemed relieved, actually. I'm sleeping better now, she told her mother one evening. I don't feel foggy anymore. I'm glad, sweetheart. Mummy, I think I didn't like Miss Eleanor as much as I pretended to. Kate pulled her daughter close. You don't have to pretend with us. Ever. If something feels wrong, you tell us. Promise. Promise. The new nanny, carefully vetted by both palace security and independent investigators, started 3 weeks after Eleanor's arrest. Charlotte was cautious at first, watchful, but gradually, under proper care, the princess bloomed. Her energy returned. Her laughter came back. The child who'd been artificially subdued for 6 months rediscovered herself. Wright watched from his security position as Charlotte played in the palace gardens one afternoon in late October. Really played, running, shouting, climbing the old oak tree, despite her new nanny's protests. Alive in a way she hadn't been since March. She looks happy, Captain Wells observed, joining Wright. Yes, sir, she does. You did that. You gave her that back. Wright didn't respond. Just watched Charlotte hang upside down from a branch, her laughter carrying across the lawn. Eleanor Hayes's preliminary hearing took place in November. She pleaded not guilty to all charges. Her defense attorney argued that Eleanor had been trying to help Charlotte, that the princess was genuinely struggling with sleep issues, that Eleanor's actions were misguided, but not malicious. The Crown Prosecution Service presented the evidence methodically, the journal entries, the emails, the search history, the multiple fraudulent prescriptions, the systematic documented pattern of drugging, spanning 6 months. Eleanor's defense collapsed. In December, she changed her plea to guilty on advice of counsel. Sentencing was scheduled for January. William attended the sentencing hearing. Not common for royals to appear in court proceedings, but he insisted. Eleanor Hayes stood before the judge. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The professional mask was long gone. The judge reviewed the case, spoke about the sacred trust placed in those who care for children, the betrayal of that trust, the harm caused not just to Charlotte, but to the entire institution of royal service. Eleanor Hayes, the judge intoned, you systematically poisoned a child in your care for your own convenience. You fraudulently obtained controlled substances. You documented your crimes with disturbing pride. You showed no remorse until confronted with irrefutable evidence. You endangered the life of a young princess who trusted you completely. Eleanor's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client has expressed deep regret. Your client expressed regret only when facing prosecution, the judge interrupted. Her own writings show no remorse, only satisfaction at her successful deception. The courtroom was silent. On the charge of administering a noxious substance to a child, I sentence you to 4 years imprisonment. On the charge of child endangerment, 3 years to run consecutively. On charges of fraudulent prescription acquisition, 1 year to run concurrently. Total sentence, 7 years in prison. Eleanor swayed slightly. Her lawyer steadied her. Additionally, the judge continued, you are permanently barred from working with children in any capacity. You will be registered as a child offender. Upon release, you will face 10 years of supervised probation. The gavel fell. 7 years. Eleanor Hayes, who'd been trusted with a princess, would spend 7 years in prison. William showed no expression as officers led Eleanor away, but Wright, standing in the back of the courtroom, saw the prince's hand unclench slightly, saw his shoulders drop just a fraction. Justice delivered. The final verdict delivered justice that few expected. Stay with us for the conclusion. Now here's what happened after the sentencing, and how William thanked the guard who saved his daughter. The day after sentencing, William requested a private meeting with Wright. They met in William's office. No staff present, no formality, just 2 men talking. Sit down, Sergeant, William said. Wright sat, uncomfortable with the informality. William poured 2 glasses of scotch, handed one to Wright. I'm told you don't drink on duty. No, sir. You're off duty for this conversation. Wright accepted the glass. William sat across from him. 7 years. It should be more. It's what the law allows, sir. The law. William shook his head. The law can't account for what she took from Charlotte. 6 months of her childhood. 6 months of confusion, fear, physical illness. 6 months of wondering why she felt wrong all the time. But Charlotte's recovering, sir. Dr. Chen says. I know what Dr. Chen says. Full physical recovery expected. Minimal. Psychological impact because we caught it in time. William looked at Wright directly. We caught it because of you. Don't say you were just doing your job, William interrupted. I've read your file, Sergeant. 12 years of military service. Multiple deployments. Transferred to Royal Protection 4 years ago. Exemplary record. Not a single incident. You know why? Sir? Because you follow protocol perfectly. You're the model of professional discipline. So when you broke protocol, when you investigated independently, when you took that glass without authorization, when you pushed this despite having no official evidence, you risked everything you'd built. Wright set down his glass. Your Highness, if I may speak freely, please. I looked at that little girl struggling to stay awake. I heard her say she couldn't remember entire afternoons. I watched her getting sicker while everyone around her made excuses. Protocol didn't matter anymore. The only thing that mattered was keeping her safe. William nodded slowly. That's integrity, Sergeant. Knowing when the rules matter less than doing what's right. He paused. I'm promoting you to Staff Sergeant, effective immediately, and I'm personally requesting you remain on Charlotte's protection detail. Sir, that's not necessary. It's not a reward, it's a request. Charlotte trusts you. She feels safe with you. After everything she's been through, her feeling safe matters more than protocol or rotation schedules. Wright felt something shift in his chest. I'd be honored, sir. Good. William stood, extended his hand. Thank you, Staff Sergeant Wright. My family owes you a debt we can never fully repay. Wright stood, shook the offered hand. Seeing her happy again, sir. That's payment enough. After Wright left, William stood alone in his office. He thought about trust, about how easily it could be betrayed, about how one person's instinct and courage had saved his daughter from ongoing harm. He picked up the phone, called Kate. It's done, he said. Wright's been promoted. He's staying on Charlotte's detail. Good, Kate replied. She asked about him yesterday. Wanted to know if he'd still be her guard. What did you tell her? That the best guards are the ones who actually care, and that Sergeant Wright clearly cares. Staff Sergeant Wright now. Kate smiled on the other end of the line. Even better. Charlotte never knew the full extent of what Eleanor had done. She knew Eleanor had made a mistake with medicine and had to go away. She knew she'd been sick, but was better now. She knew that some people weren't who they seemed to be, but that the good people would always protect her. That was enough. For now. Years later, when she was older, William and Kate would tell her the complete truth. They'd show her how Wright had noticed patterns others missed, how he'd trusted his instincts despite having no proof, how he'd risked his career to keep her safe. But today, Charlotte was a child who could play without artificial exhaustion, who could remember her afternoons, who could trust the people around her because the one who'd betrayed that trust was gone. Wright returned to duty. Same corridors, same position, same professional distance. But something had changed. Staff nodded to him with new respect. Senior officers sought his opinion. The guard who'd saved a princess. He didn't want the attention, preferred the quiet professionalism he'd always maintained. But he accepted the promotion, accepted the thanks, accepted the responsibility of continuing to protect Charlotte. Because at the end of the day, that's what mattered. Not recognition, not career advancement. Just knowing that a child who'd been suffering was safe now. 3 months after Eleanor's sentencing, Charlotte approached Wright during her afternoon break from lessons. "Staff Sergeant Wright," she said politely. "Yes, Your Highness." "I made you something." She held out a drawing. Watercolor, her favorite medium. It showed a figure in a guard's uniform standing beside a smaller figure in a dress. Both were smiling. "That's beautiful, Your Highness." "It's you," Charlotte explained, "and protecting me, like you always do." Wright felt an unfamiliar tightness in his throat. "I'm honored, Your Highness." Charlotte smiled. "You can call me Charlotte when it's just us. Everyone else does." "I'm afraid that wouldn't be proper protocol, Your Highness." "Oh." She looked disappointed, then brightened. "Can you at least keep the drawing?" "I'd like that very much." Charlotte ran off to her next lesson, energy and life in every movement. Wright looked down at the drawing. Simple, childish, beautiful. He kept it in his office. Still has it today. A reminder that protocol matters, but people matter more. The broader changes came quietly. Palace administration implemented new background check procedures for all staff working with royal children. Medical monitoring increased. Security protocols were updated to include behavioral observation training. Captain Wells summarized it in a staff meeting. Eleanor Hayes was one person, one abuser, who slipped through. "We've learned from this, we've adapted, and we'll be watching more carefully." But Wells knew, and Wright knew, and everyone who'd been involved knew, no system would ever be perfect. No protocol could guarantee safety. It came down to people. Guards like Wright, who paid attention, who trusted instinct, who cared enough to risk comfort for truth. The news media never got the full story. Palace officials released a brief statement. "A former staff member has been dismissed and is facing criminal charges unrelated to official duties. The royal family has no further comment." That was all the public knew. Eleanor Hayes became a footnote, a minor scandal that barely registered in the constant stream of royal news. Charlotte's name was never mentioned. Her suffering remained private, protected, as it should be. But within palace walls, everyone knew, everyone understood. A child had been harmed by someone trusted, and a guard had saved her. William made one more private gesture. He arranged for Wright to receive a Royal Victorian Order medal, not publicly announced, no ceremony. Just a private presentation in William's office. "For exceptional service to the royal family," William said as he pinned her the medal. "Wear it knowing you earned it in the most important way possible." Wright accepted with quiet dignity. The medal went into a drawer at home. He didn't wear it, didn't display it, didn't need to. He knew what he'd done. Charlotte knew. William knew. That was enough. Life returned to normal rhythms. Charlotte thrived under proper care. George and Louis remained blissfully unaware of how close their sister had come to serious harm. Kate and William moved forward with enhanced vigilance, but tried not to let fear dominate their parenting. And Wright continued his duty, watching, protecting, trusting his instincts, because that's what separated good guards from great ones. Good guards followed protocol. Great guards knew when protocol wasn't enough. Eleanor Hayes served her sentence in HMP Bronzefield, a women's prison in Surrey. She was denied parole twice. Other inmates learned what she'd done. Prisoners have their own hierarchy, and child abusers rank at the bottom. She was released in late 2032 after serving her full 7 years. Immediately placed on probation, barred from working with children, required to register as an offender, her professional life destroyed, her reputation permanently tarnished. Some might say 7 years wasn't enough for 6 months of systematic poisoning. Others might argue she paid her debt to society. Wright had no opinion on the matter. His job wasn't punishment. It was protection. And Charlotte was protected. That's all that mattered. On Charlotte's next birthday, Wright stood at his usual post during the small family celebration, watched her blow out candles, surrounded by people who genuinely cared for her safety and happiness. She caught his eye across the room, smiled, gave a small wave. He nodded back, professional, appropriate, but with genuine warmth. This was why he'd joined Royal Protection. Not for prestige or proximity to power. For moments like this. Children safe. Families intact. Threats neutralized. One person's instinct had changed everything. Had saved a princess from ongoing harm. Had sent a predator to prison. Had reminded everyone that duty means more than following orders. It means doing what's right, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. True duty isn't about following orders blindly. It's about knowing when rules matter less than doing what's right. It's about trusting your instincts when everyone else sees nothing wrong. It's about standing between a child and harm, regardless of who the threat is or how trusted they appear. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones we trust most. And sometimes the greatest act of service is refusing to look away when something feels wrong. If this story showed you why palace security matters more than most people realize, make sure you're subscribed. We share these untold stories from behind palace walls every single day. Drop a comment. Would you have trusted your instincts like Staff Sergeant Wright did, or waited for more proof before acting? Tell us what you would have done. We'll see you in the next one.